ES Audio.
The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio. Six Nations Special.
Hello and welcome to the Evening Standard Rugby Podcast. I'm Lawrence Dallaglio. This week we're coming to you live from the London office of QBE Business Insurance, where we have a very smart-looking audience, and I'm sure a very rugby knowledgeable audience, who will no doubt be firing some questions over our way a little later on. I'm delighted to welcome back the First Lady of Rugby, the lady that knows everything, the lady that interviews everyone. Sarra, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too, Lawrence. Good to see you all. Shall I introduce the rest of the team then on the end here from the Evening Standard? It's Steve Cording. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Sarra. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. And this man here, of course, needs no introduction, although he is going to be very warm in his farewell jumper tonight. A special guest this week, 54 England caps to his name. He toured New Zealand with the British and Irish Lions in 2017. He's made over 160 appearances for Bath Rugby. It's Jonathan Joseph.
Hey.
How are you, JJ?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good
very well.
to see you. Okay, so before we get started on the rugby chat, we like to kind of find out what everyone's been up to in the week. Lawrence, like we were all grafting on BT this weekend. You had a weekend off. What did you do?
What did I do? I saw you on TV. You're everywhere, Sar. You are a superstar. How many contracts have you got?
I asked what you were doing this weekend, thanks.
I was watching rugby because I'm sad, but just enjoyed myself. Walked the dog, cooked a roast, had a few pints. I am kid-free now. My daughters have both left their house. My son's at Bristol Uni, so yeah.
I'm glad I asked that. That was
empty
a really
nesting.
interesting answer.
Yeah, well, I went for a session down the pub with my mates. What do you want me to say?
No, I think that's fine. Steve, what have you been up to?
I was just going to say, lucky you, Lol. half term last week. So, everybody seen Ninja Warrior? Fans of Ninja Warrior? Well, I took my two little children to the new Ninja Warrior at Guildford Spectrum, which was fantastic. I didn't actually take part on the course, although there were a few dads in Lycra. I avoided that.
Oh, nice.
I was very tempted to try and beat the wall, but no, I didn't have a go. So I'd highly recommend it if you've got children. It's a great day out.
Have you ever done that, JJ?
I don't have children yet, but I'm expecting a baby girl in June.
Oh, you were doing
Yes,
that.
I am. I'm going to be a father.
Congratulations. Well, life will change then. Watch out.
Life will change, yeah. But for me, I've just been... we played on Saturday. We lost quite badly. And then, I've just been at training all week.
JJ, you know this. Well, I mean, obviously, when you have a boy, you've only got one boy to worry about. When you have a girl, you've got everyone else's boy to worry about. Just so we're clear.
That's very true. Okay, let's park that chat for a minute then. Before we talk about rugby, let's put some questions to our special guest. JJ, it kind of seemed like you were always destined for rugby, because I was reading something a while ago that your dad kind of had your kind of career in rugby all planned out for you since when you were a baby. Am I right?
Yeah. So before I was born, my parents bought one of those little baby books where you write down what the baby's going to be called, what your aspirations are for the child. And my dad, I think it was a throwaway comment at the time, but he wrote international rugby player. And then, his dreams came true, I guess.
Wow. Did he play rugby?
He tried to play rugby. He talks a good game. He said he was great. I actually watched him a little bit when I was younger, and he was terrible. But he played for Northampton.
I love the way he's
Okay.
rating himself with the DNA international rugby player.
Yeah.
He got it bang on.
You going to ask about the England debut?
I am, yes. I mean, obviously, times have changed a little bit, but I made my debut way back when Betamax video was a thing, but it was about 1995. I came on as a replacement against South Africa. I never forget, actually, when you used to look at... Because you only came on as a replacement if someone had basically died, really. And I was sat next to Graham Dorr, the hooker, and he said, I think you'll get on today. He'd sat on the bench 35 times. And I said, what makes you so sure? He said, have you seen the size of those South Africans warming up over there? So, JJ, talk us through your debut. Was it at Twickenham? Was it away from Twickenham? Do you remember it?
I remember it very well. We were in South Africa, end of season tour, and I think there was approximately 2 minutes and 7 seconds to go.
Very precise.
Yeah, it wasn't long. I had so much adrenaline in me, and we had a kick-off, and I remember, I think it was Toby Flood, kicked it short, we were losing. Seems to be a trend with me at the minute, but yeah, we were losing. Sprinted for this ball. I don't think I've ever jumped so high, and I pretty much did a backflip, didn't touch the ball at all, and pretty much broke my back. But yeah, we lost the game. I don't think we won a game. No, we didn't win a game for that whole tour, and that was my England debut.
2.5 minutes. Actually, I lost to South Africa on my debut, and I lost to South Africa in my last game as well. So it's thankfully we did a bit of damage in between. But you mentioned about playing at Bath. You've been through quite a lot of the highs and lows. You've probably seen quite a lot of everything at Bath. It's fair to say you've had a challenging couple of years. Just, you've got a new coaching team, new players coming in now. There's obviously an incredible setup. We know rugby players go through all sorts of emotions throughout your career, but where would you assess the kind of mood of the team? I mean, yes, the results aren't quite coming, but there must be a bit of excitement on the horizon.
Yeah, the last couple of years have been tough. But in that, there has been growth. So Johan's come in this year and he's instilled a sort of game plan he wants us to play. And there is belief around that. But for us, we've just come short. Sort of majority of the games, we've just come short. And, we're not far off. We've got a few injuries and things like that. But in terms of where we've been before, where we're losing games by, 20, 30 points, if not more, we're in the fight now at least. And it's just going to have to be that sort of added layer on top where the results will, be in our favour.
And you, I mean, I consider you as a senior player now within the group.
How old are you now, by the way?
31.
Are you actually?
I am.
God, you are getting on
Not veteran, senior player within the group.
I said you were 31.
Do you get to challenge that coaching structure and that setup a little bit? I mean, is it, because ultimately the coach is the guy that wants you to play the way he wants to play, but ultimately he's now out there on the pitch, so he's not the one getting his face smashed in. So do you actually challenge each other a little bit, and is there room for that kind of two-way challenge?
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, I'm not one to shy away from what I believe in or how I think a game should be played. So, more times than not, I'm at his office talking about, in the right way obviously, but talking about how I think we can attack better, and I think we need to put more time into this area of the game. And yeah, we have a good relationship in terms of that.
I don't know who your social secretary is at Bath. Have you got one at the moment? Because there's a certain Finn Russell about to arrive next season.
He'll be the new social secretary.
I think
sure.
he might take that up a notch. I mean, how exciting is that you've got him arriving, you've got all these plans for new ground, new stands. I know the league position doesn't look good at the moment, but it's all heading in the right direction, is it?
Yeah, no, I think it's exciting. Finn Russell speaks for himself. He's a brilliant player. I know him a little bit off the field, and he's good fun off the field as well. I won't talk too much about that. But no, he's a great talent, and I think if Bath want to push on and improve their attack, he's the perfect man to come in and do that. Whether that relationship between Johan and him will end up Bath playing in that type of manner, we'll see.
And he's having a really good Six Nations, isn't he?
He's playing very well. He is, isn't he? I mean, listen, he's a mercurial player. I mean, you've got to look at his highlights reels. He does things that no other players do, and that helps to grow the game. It brings new people in. I think there's always a balance, isn't there? Bath kick the ball quite a lot at the moment under Van Graan. I don't think they'll be doing that next season. So it'll be very chatty. I'm interested. I don't want to be controversial, but was he a player that the coach went out and said to the owner, we should buy, or is it one that the owners bought and actually given him to the team? So
he's going to sell shirts for sure.
He will sell shirts. Yeah.
Try saying that 10 times. Sell shirts for sure. Try again.
It'd be good to watch. So a full schedule of Premiership action, despite the Six Nations being on. I'm just wondering, when players kind of go back and forth from the international setup to club rugby during this period, does that make it more difficult for clubs as well, just to get continuity and to know who's back in and who's going? Is it tough?
Yeah, it is, because you almost don't know until the Thursday, Friday if you're getting a player back. And it's weird. You always find, obviously, the players that are away are your better players, that they're playing for their country. They don't quite make the international side, so they come back on the Thursday, Friday. More times than not, they will underperform at the weekend just because they've not had that week prep at the club, learning the plays, remembering how, Bath, let's say, play compared to how England play. So it's tough. It's tough for the player, but it's also tough for the coach to make the right selection decision. You
mentioned your family earlier. I mean, you're being quite modest, actually, I think, because you've got quite a gene pool there. I mean, your sister's played netball for England. Obviously, your brother is at London Irish. What's your relationship like, particularly with your brother? Because obviously he's younger. I mean, I've got a younger brother, and I was forever telling him...
He just stole his pocket money, really.
Exactly, telling him what to do and giving him advice. I mean, does he come to you for that? Because you lived together for quite a while during lockdown, didn't you?
So yeah, so my brother's 12 years younger than me. So it's not so much a competitive relationship as many brothers probably have when they're a lot closer together. But I almost feel like a father type figure for him because I was 12 when he was born. But he'll come to me for advice. I was super proud of him. I almost got emotional when he made his debut last summer in Australia. But yeah, I'm obviously biased, but he's a great talent, and he's a better bloke than me. So
has he forgiven you for missing his debut in Australia? You were on your stag weekend, weren't you?
How do you know all this?
Oh.
Yes, I was on my stag do, but we had a good phone call that night. He was drunk in a bar somewhere, and I was drunk in a pub somewhere. So.
Oh, we're just going to get a restraining order for Steve against you now, by the way. You know way too much, Steve. Big game on the weekend, though. It always is, isn't it? West Country derby. Is the feeling running up to a derby, does it feel that little bit more different, spicier? How does it work?
Yeah, there's always that added edge. I think particularly this year, Bath are bottom. I think Bristol are second from bottom, so it is battle of the worst teams in the Premiership at the minute. So bragging rights obviously there, and yeah, I think for both teams it's a massive game just in terms of where they want to end up at the end of the season. I'd imagine both teams want to finish in the top 6 to play in Europe next year, and that's definitely achievable with how tight the league is this year. So I think, yeah, this game's going to be a real hard-fought battle.
Should we move on to Six Nations then?
I think we should. It holds a special place in your heart, and I'm sure in every player's heart. You scored your first England try, I think, in the opening game against Wales, is that right?
Yep.
In 2015. Sorry to mention that, Sarra.
Did you win?
We did.
You actually scored a hat-trick against Italy the following year and one against Scotland the year after. So I think you've done very, very well. England heading to Cardiff this weekend. I don't know if... Can we say anything?
We can. I think we can.
Have we got official news? I mean...
Well, I think the game is on, so from what we understand, that it broke just before we came out, so that's good news.
It's fascinating, that whole situation. Must be very... Well, Sarra, you're up from Wales. What's the mood like down there? England-Wales games are amazing normally, so the build-up to this one, with strike action, just fancy doing everything that anyone's doing in the country at the moment. Yeah,
I don't know, lots been made of it, obviously, in the press and stuff, but I'm quite surprised. I think a lot of people are maybe taking the players' sides as opposed to the union. There's just seems to be a real disconnect at the moment between the regions and the players and the union. It's all a bit of a mess, but I'm really interested in finding out what you lot think, like this side of the bridge, kind of looking in on what's going on in Wales.
It's great ahead of Saturday that it's in such a mess, isn't it?
Oh yeah, amazing.
Well, withdrawing your labour in any job is the last resort, isn't it? It's never really, you're never really going to win the PR battle when you threaten not to work. And when you get your face smashed in for a living, that's quite a big thing to do. Unfortunately, we had to do that in 2001, which is obviously a long, long time ago. We went on strike. We threatened to go on strike. We agreed with the then CEO of the RFU that we would be remunerated at a certain level. He then came back with something that didn't tally with the conversation we had with him an hour before that. So, as a point of principle, we went on strike. Thankfully, that didn't materialise. We played Argentina, which was a tough game, and we won 19-0. It was a real distraction for us. We didn't train all week. I'm sure the Welsh players probably haven't trained all week.
A lot of sessions have been cancelled.
But that can sometimes be a good thing.
Who was your spokesman that age? Because
Martin Johnson, really.
I was going to say, looking at that.
If you want a picket line, you send him in. I mean, look, there's no way that if I went on strike, people would say, "Oh, it must be you." But actually, if people like Johnny Wilkinson, Richard Hill, and Martin Johnson did, then there must be something genuinely wrong. So, I think with Alan Wynne-Jones, he's a man of great standing in the game. He's a man of principle. I'm sure they're doing it because they believe it's the right thing to do. I feel sorry for Warren Gatland. He's in the middle. He has got to be a friend to all the players, but he's also an employee of the WRU. So
it kind of feels like a really big day, though. Like it kind of feels like a big day in the kind of history of Welsh rugby. I mean, we don't know what the solutions or the resolutions are yet. It hasn't been disclosed, but it's interesting, JJ, isn't it? Because what I find interesting now is the mindset of the Welsh players going into this game and just how much of a distraction this would have been this week.
Yeah, it definitely would have been a distraction. We can't hide away from that. But the Welsh love to beat England. If there's one thing that they'll want to get out this week, this game being on is everything for them. They can let out some anger, some frustration. They've not had the best Six Nations so far, but England in Cardiff, those Welsh boys will be right up for it. And we talk about a training week. We say, if you train really, really well, then you're going to have a good game. It's not the case. Like sometimes I've had the worst training week possible and had one of my best games, scored a hat-trick at Twickenham or something like that. So it doesn't always correlate, and don't be surprised if Wales come out all guns blazing on Saturday and put in a good performance.
I'm just looking forward to watching this episode on Netflix. I mean, it'd be fascinating, wouldn't it? Although apparently the Welsh players have refused to film what's going on at the moment, but it'd be a great insight. I mean, as a player, how would you feel at the moment? Apparently they're walking around. Some countries have given them more access than others. I think England have basically said, no, we don't want you here. But if you had, you've obviously got Ben O'Barno, who's a filmmaker anyway at Bath. Does he walk around with the camera? Is he going to do a film on Bath? But how would you feel about it?
I think we've got to do it. I think in terms of growing the game, I think if you see what it's done, I didn't watch F1 before I watched Drive to Survive. I watched that a couple of years ago, and it's probably my favourite sport to watch now. So in terms of what it can do for the sport, I think it's massive. Like, I think, the fans, they don't really get to see the individual as they are, and I think that platform almost gives them that. I think you see a lot of media interviews and people giving the same generic answers, and it's boring. It really is. And I think when you get to know a person and you know a player and you know what they're about, I think you're more drawn to them, and I can only see it being a positive for the sport.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about grow the game, because what would you say is more important? Is it for you as a player, is it player performance, or is it growing the game?
For me, they're both important. I think if you see the way how many teams, countries are financially being hit now, it's like something needs to change. The model needs to change, and if this is the way to go, then I think we need to.
You look at the way people digest sport these days. Most of our kids don't watch linear TV. They just consume on mobiles in little, bite-sized pieces. We're kind of competing for people's attention. I've just started watching the Netflix one on the golfers. I don't know if you've seen that. It's fascinating.
You sound like a grandfather.
Here's another private jet. Looks pretty good, doesn't it, being a golfer? But also, the way rugby is, everyone sees one side of rugby players. It looks terribly glamorous, and it can be at times. But there is another side to it when you go through every emotion that any sports person does. You have days where things are brilliant, you're playing really well, you lose form, you snap your ACL, you break your ankle, you get stitches in your face. There's all sorts of, you can be dropped. There's so many different emotions that you experience as a player. Imagine, being measured every single day on your performance, every day, and then someone tells you whether you got a job this week or not. You're in the team or you're not. And to go through that roller coaster of emotions, I think is incredible. And to be able to share that with the public is also something that I think we need. And, I agree. I'd give them more access and grow the game as much as possible, because
you'd be great viewing on a Netflix series. You would. I'd pay money to watch
Clive
that.
Woodward said to us in a room, he said, "I want you guys to be household names. I want you to all to be famous, and we're going to try and win the World Cup." Maybe not quite like that, Lawrence. So that wasn't quite what I was aiming for, but we got there. We managed to take. Well, I said, look,
you grew the game.
I was bringing on the white van drivers. You know what I mean? That was all. It's a slightly different demographic that weren't watching rugby, really. But
how have we got to this point when we're talking about Six Nations matches at the weekend? I don't know. Let's move on to Ireland then. They're heading to Rome to face
Hold on a
Italy.
minute. Do you think Wales will win the game at the weekend, don't you?
Well, if there's one game that Wales could win, it is this weekend, because as JJ was saying, they get, Wales get up for playing.
Yes, I agree with you.
Have we got any Welsh fans out here that... One. Well, two? What do you make of the whole situation? Can you get a mic?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks.
Sorry. I thought you were going to do that. You've outsourced it. I like that.
I have outsourced it, yeah.
He's much happier if you get asked the question.
I support the players. So I think the unions messed everything up, actually. And I also think we'll get tonked at the weekend.
You think Wales will get tonked? Yeah. I'm sorry, I gave you the mic now. Come back here.
I've got to say, this is a huge game for both teams. Two new coaches, Warren Gatland. When you come back, I don't know what people think about coming back to another. When Mourinho went back to Chelsea, it was a disaster. Warren Gatland's probably thinking, was that the right choice? But Steve Borthwick's a huge game, especially when you've got France and Ireland next. So it would be a big statement if England can win.
Yeah, what was the mood, Sarra, when he came back? Were you all thinking, this is great, it's going to go back to the way it was?
I think everybody in Wales thought we were going to win the Grand Slam, basically when they announced Gats was coming back. But I don't know. Anyway, we'll see at the weekend. Let's move on to Ireland then, shall we? They're in Rome. Can you see anything but an emphatic win for
listen, Italy are improving enormously, aren't they? And I don't just mean that in just well done Italy. They really are improving. They make big strides. If you think about it, they've won their first Six Nations game. Well, they beat Wales, didn't they? They've beaten Australia for the first time. They've had very, very good performances against South Africa. They took France to the wire. And I think there's a coherent plan there. They brought a guy over, Stephen Atoob, who's really realised that you're never going to compete with football in Italy. But what you can do is you can narrow down the number of schools that play the sport and actually fast track those guys through, a bit like they do in Australia. And I think it's bearing dividends. They're getting there. And there was lots of people maybe in this room that thought Italy should never be in the Six Nations. I'm going to Rome this weekend to cover the game. I would advocate they should always be in the Six Nations. I think it's a fantastic experience. So they're getting better, but Ireland are a different level, aren't they? And it's not a question of whether they'll win, it's just how many. And hopefully they don't pick up any injuries.
Do you see anyone beating Ireland?
No, I don't. I think Ireland unbelievable at the minute. I think they're probably one of the best teams in the world, if not the. In terms of how they attack and how they're all on the same page, they put teams under tremendous amount of pressure. You know, their forwards can pretty much all ball play. They have a great way of finding space, even when it doesn't seem to be there. Yeah, they're almost the perfect team at the minute. Talking about Italy, I think the thing that really impressed me about them is actually the way they attack as well. That they haven't got the best individuals, but how they're actually performing in terms of 1 to 15, they're all on the same page now. And you saw that in that France game, they actually put France under a lot of pressure, even though they made some mistakes. Some of their phase play attack was actually tremendous, and don't be surprised if they come up with a surprise win in the Six Nations.
I think with Ireland, Steve, what's kind of evident is just the strength in depth they've got at the minute, isn't it? I mean, they beat France when Johnny Sexton was off the field at the 49th minute. Jameson Gibson Park wasn't playing. Tyke wasn't playing, was he? Tyke Furlong wasn't playing. So, like, you know, big players for them, and they still go on and beat France.
Yeah, I think we touched on it already. I mean, they're so well coached, and an English coach who obviously is another one who slipped through the RFU's hands, but I think they've got a plan that they're following, but I think it just shows the difference as well. I mean, we've already touched on Wales, the difference between the way that the Irish have sorted out their central contracts. Everybody knows they're all on the same page. Their professional clubs are all at the top of the URC. Wales' professional clubs all near the bottom of the URC. It sort of tells the story, really, doesn't it?
The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio. Six Nations Special.
Right, let's move on then. Shall we to Scotland? So they travel to France. It feels like that's going to be like a massive game for Scotland. I mean, they won their first 2 matches of the Six Nations for the first time ever. Like, is it going to be another false dawn for Scottish rugby, or?
I mean, I look at Scotland. I mean, they, you know, for them in the past, if they beat England and they lose to everyone else, that's a brilliant season for them. You know, and
the Welsh feel like that as well.
Well, everyone feels like that. And by the way, the feeling is mutual. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not your right to hate us. We hate you as well. I mean, that's just clear. And when we display it, it's jingoism. When you display it, it's patriotism. I can't quite understand it. But anyway, I think Scotland have gone beyond that. They're now players who expect to win games. They have a bit more belief about them. And as JJ said, they're a team that have, you know, they're coming to the ball at the right time. You know, they've gone through that World Cup cycle. I think Gregor has had some ups and downs, hasn't he? Particularly with Finn Russell, and, you know, not quite sure about who to pick. And there was people saying he should be no longer be the coach, but actually just at the right time, the results are starting to come through now. So, you know, I'm impressed with them. They beat England. I wasn't expecting that. I thought England might have enough just with the energy of having a new coach to win that game, but 4 out of 5 times they've beaten England. She's now getting embarrassing. And, you know, they've actually managed to win back-to-back games. So you thought Wales were poor that day. This is the real test now, because this is a big jump in level for them. But I tell you, they'll go to France and think they can do it, yeah?
And like you were saying, JJ, like, they've got players at the moment that are just playing really well as individuals, and that always helps, obviously, a team.
Yeah, massively. I think, look at Edinburgh, look at Glasgow. A lot of, obviously, Scottish players in their teams, and they're playing actually probably at their potential, and that's massive. That gives you such an added bonus if you know you're performing well at the minute. That's the psychological, you know, upper hand you get from that is huge. And I also think with Finn Russell at the minute, I think he's unbelievable. And if he's on the money, if the Scottish pack can match the French, and Finn Russell's on the money, I can definitely see Scotland. I can see it. I'm not going to. I mean, I don't bet obviously because I'm a professional rugby player, but I wouldn't put money on it. But potentially like a £5.
Who are you going for there, Steve?
Well, I think this, as Lawrence has said, it's the acid test, isn't it? The French have not quite clicked yet, and I think them playing at home in a year when there's a Rugby World Cup, the pressure from the home fans for them to perform will just be immense for them to do it. But in terms of the Scots, I think the one player that you'd have to pick out is a very Scottish-sounding Doan van der Merwe. You sound so Scottish, doesn't he, really? But he's been immense for them, as their forward pack. But I think France by 10 on Sunday. Yeah,
and I don't think losing to Ireland would have done France any harm, actually, either, to be honest.
The key to being a serial winner is detesting losing. And, you know, listen, France have been unbeaten for, 14, 15 test matches, and then they've come unstuck against a very, very good side. You've got to put that in perspective. Knowing Sean Edwards very well, they would have had a very frank and honest conversation on Monday in his Wiganese French that he delivers. And, you know, they'll come out the blocks all guns blazing. I mean, I expect France to win that game quite comfortably. They're one of the best sides in the world. And I think good sides. You can lose the occasional game. It's acceptable, and then you come back and win.
Okay, well, I'm sure you guys have got some questions for Lawrence, JJ and Steve, but before we get to your questions, it's time for you to be tackled, JJ, by Lawrence Dallaglio, not properly tackled, obviously,
definitely
with some
not.
questions.
It won't be a high tackle, don't worry.
No,
hopefully not.
Well, no, I couldn't get close to him, trust me.
Tackled.
JJ, your full name, please.
Jonathan Byron Alexander Joseph. Why did you look at me like that?
Oh, that's
Bit
really
of
posh.
poet in there, bit of poet.
I love
You've got
that.
to tell us the origin of that. Come on, what's behind that then?
Which part?
All 4 names.
Well, Byron.
Jokes.
Byron's
It's nice.
my grandfather's name. Alexander, I think that was after one of the Alexander the Great or something like that.
I love that.
Really interesting, yeah.
I've learned something about you
Okay, so
today.
the next interesting. So, what does a professional rugby player have for his breakfast in the morning? Are you a breakfast guy? Do you eat a lot for breakfast?
I don't eat a lot, but I had a fry up today.
Good man.
Yeah.
Good man. He's clearly not playing at the weekend. Best advice that you've ever been given? My mum said to me, you can always catch up on a good night's sleep, but never a good night out. That was good advice.
Well, you've properly taken that, haven't you? That's been your life mantra.
Probably a little. That's on my tombstone.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
No, what would you say is the best advice you've been given? It doesn't have to be rugby related.
No.
It just could be anything, really.
It probably would be along the lines of talent can only get you so far. I think I was always pretty laid back as a kid, and things did come easy to me. And then when I got to the professional era, I realised pretty quickly I'm going to have to work quite hard.
Yeah, there's a lot of talented people around as well, isn't there? Who is the most famous person in your phone book, in your concept book? Choose a good one. Eh?
Who's yours?
Mine is Lawrence, obviously.
Oh, shut up. Well, you've been hacked, clearly.
Tyrone Mings.
Do you go to, I'm
Not
going
great.
to freak you
Who's
out again
yours,
now.
son?
You went to the same school.
He was yeah, but I didn't know him at school because he was a few years younger than me. Well, I actually met him in Vegas.
You've got to tell us that story.
Was I?
In Vegas? No.
No.
Hugo
actually, you know
was,
what?
wasn't he?
I
Was
haven't
Hugo with you?
I haven't actually been to Vegas.
I've seen some videos of Vegas trips. Not those kind of videos, but like... Okay, moving on. Next question.
Right. What did I say? Who would play you, or who would you like to play you in a film about your life?
Denzel Washington.
Nice.
Just the governor. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Aim
That'll
high.
do. That'll do. Who is the funniest person you know, either in the dressing room or outside of the dressing room?
Elliot Stook. He's funny, but he's more just like his persona. Like he'll walk into the room and get it completely wrong, but get it right almost. You know what I mean? And he's hilarious. He picks everyone's mood up. He's great to have around training.
And if you were singing a karaoke song or a song at the front of the bus, what's your go-to number that you would get up and sing in front of the team? Sar's got a whole album, haven't you, really?
I love karaoke.
Teenage pop star, just so you know.
Probably a John Legend number.
Oh, smooth. Yeah. Who's the best rugby player of all time? Who's the person that made you think, wow? No, that's only in my own head, Sarah, I think that. Honestly, I was told, best bit of advice, Francis Emerua said to me, when you go out on that field, imagine that you're the best rugby player on that field. You have to believe that, and if you believe that, you might do okay. But who was the guy that made you think, wow, I want to play this game?
It's not an English player. Is that all right?
Perfect. I thought you were gonna
Is
say,
it Welsh?
I thought you were going to say Guscott or someone like that.
2005 Lions tour, Dan Carter was something else. So yeah, I'll say Dan Carter.
JJ, what is your most memorable rugby moment?
My best moment will be, so I got dropped by Eddie in an Italian game, and then the week after he brought me back in, and it was Scotland, and it was at home, and I felt like it was a big game in terms of like my future, like the World Cup was coming up. There was discussion whether Ben Teo should be playing ahead of me, and I ended up scoring a hat-trick against Scotland at home, which was unbelievable. Like, yeah, completely elated. My family were there. Yeah, it was amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, not a clue what he was doing that Australian, was he? Not a clue.
Did he give you a reason why you were dropped? 'Cause we've heard some spurious stories from
He
some
never
courses.
treated me like you might have heard from other people.
Did you like him?
He never, to my face, mistreated me.
Okay. Ooh.
Ooh, to your face.
But he did behind your back.
Well, I don't know.
It's a Netflix series right there.
I think it's very. I mean, I've been dropped. We've all been dropped. It's very hard as a coach to speak to a player, and that's your job. Delivering good news is easy, right? Anyone can do that. Same in business. Delivering bad news is not easy, and sometimes you just got to do it honestly and face to face, and actually not leave a message on someone's phone or send them a text. just tell them. And sometimes you don't know the reasons why you're dropping someone. It's just a gut feeling. I'm the coach. That's the way I am.
Is that actually one of the most important things you want from a head coach or a DOR?
Yeah, definitely, because some of the excuses people have told me before, or when a coach just completely makes something up and you can see right through it. Who was it? It was someone like, there was a player and he used the excuse his work rate wasn't good enough, and it was someone who is known for his work. I can't remember. I wish I could remember who it was. But no, you just want to be honest. Sometimes I've been told by Eddie himself, it's a gut feeling. You're on the bench, or he would tell me, I'm gonna this week, Jay, I'm gonna start. My starting team is going to be on the bench, so I want my finishers to be the starters. So it's a different way of saying you're on the bench.
Either way, you didn't appreciate it. Okay, guys, so we're going to broaden the questions now. I don't know if any of you guys have got any questions for... Oh, you're getting up again?
Well,
this is good.
Come on.
He doesn't like sitting down.
Yeah, no.
I don't.
So it can be to Lauren, Steve, or to JJ, obviously.
Well, hands up, please, at the back there. Anyone got any questions for... I mean, they must have some Irish, Welsh, Scottish fans in the room, English fans. There we go, sir.
Hiya. Where do you think the amateur game will end up with tackle height?
Go straight in there with that.
I've just retired.
You can answer. You can start with that.
In my opinion, it's got to change. Yeah, it's got to. Surely it's common sense. I mean, Luke Charteris, 6'8". I mean, when he was a kid, he was not that tall, but he would have been pretty tall. Him trying to tackle a scrum half below the waistline, isn't it? It just isn't going to work. And a lot of people, professional players, have come out and said most concussions I've got is from actually going low and getting a hip or a knee to the head. So
I don't quite understand. I mean, I've had a young boy growing up, my son, and we've all, those of us who have got kids, boys or girls, you're on the touchline watching your son or daughter playing against someone who is considerably heavier and bigger than them, but the same age. And it's like, well, this doesn't really make sense to me. The Kiwis, realised very quickly that it should be an age weight thing. You don't put heavyweight in with a flyweight, do you? And actually, I used to turn up at mini rugby and I think, right, with any luck, this will be over by 1 o'clock. We can get down the pub. And actually, you're still there at 4 PM because there's been that many kids lying prone on the floor. So I do think they have to change things a little bit, for sure.
When the RFU came out and made that announcement in haste, was that something that the players, I mean, obviously it didn't affect the professional level, but the players go, this is not, understand the sentiment, but it just didn't seem...
Right, it just didn't seem like that was the fix, do you know what I mean? Around the change room, it was just...
Known as a comms disaster, I think is what it was called.
That's what I was going to say, but I'll let you say it.
Good old RFU. They haven't really learned, have they? Has anyone else got a question? Yes, sir.
Just curious, for your time and for your time, JJ, and big Bath fan, where's the best place to play away? Not necessarily for the game, but just for the whole environment. Where was it most fun for you?
Club or country?
Club level.
Well, playing away from home is the test of. I mean, I think it's lovely playing in front of your own supporters, but everyone can do that really. Spoon-fed adrenaline. If you play, in front of lots of fans, then it's your happy place. It's comfortable. You sleep in your own bed most of the time, and you've got a routine that you can fulfil. Playing away from home challenges you, challenges the group. The more hostile, the better for me. I found the south of France, at club level, really, the south of France, really, if you can go down there and win a game of rugby and get a standing ovation from their supporters, then you've done something quite good. And actually, if you really want to find out about rugby players, you actually go and watch them away from home rather than at home, because that's where you find out whether they've got what it takes, if you know what I mean.
What about you?
So I'm quite different to Lawrence. I quite like a good track, ideally. So for me, it was be Franklin's Garden. Got a great pitch. The fans are actually brilliant. It's actually a really good atmosphere. But majority of players would tell you Welford Road or Gloucester, just for the atmosphere, the abuse.
How small is that away dressing room though at Franklin's Gardens? It's tiny, isn't it?
It can't be smaller than Bath's.
Really?
Have you not seen Bath's? I think there was something that came out, like if Bath were in the Championship, they wouldn't be allowed to be promoted because the changing rooms was that small.
Bath is so small that you have to get changed in the hotel before you get to the stadium. Right, another question. That was a very good question. Yes, sir.
One for JJ. Have the Wasps and Worcester players settled at Bath?
Yes, very well. One's playing for England at the weekend, I think, and the others have, transitioned in brilliantly. All very good players, all performed very well. We only had Billy Searle for a short period of time, but they added tough times for them, obviously, but they came in with a brilliant attitude.
I think it shows that if you have a bit of experience outside of the rugby club that genuinely is kind of life-changing, that you experience a little bit of resilience and it makes you perform even better, doesn't it? It makes you consider yourself, how lucky you are to actually reflect. And sometimes as professional players, you don't necessarily get that time to reflect. And when that happens, that you go out there and perform. And Ollie Lawrence, what he's doing at the moment, Jack Willis, these guys, is it a surprise that we're seeing some really good performances from people that have nearly had everything taken away from them?
But you know what? That's really interesting, because when I interviewed Johan van Graan, because when they got to Bath, it kind of coincided, didn't it, with you guys winning a few games back to back, if I remember correctly. I remember asking Johan van Graan, kind of, is it because that they've arrived, or what's clicked? And he was saying that he thought them arriving had some sort of an effect on you guys as well, by realising actually how lucky are we not to have gone through what they've just been through.
Yeah, definitely. 'Cause it's something that's I've never experienced obviously before, and I don't think anyone has, in terms of, as a rugby player, you always feel pretty secure in your job. You never think your club's going to go bust. It's just not a thing that's ever happened. And it was a shock around the whole Premiership when, there was rumours flying around, but no one ever thought, oh my God, this could actually be happening. And then when it did, it was like, whoa, what do they do now? Like, people have mortgages. So yeah, it was a shock, and it made us very grateful to be at a stable club, I guess.
We've got another question here, sir.
Obviously, international rugby is the aim, but for both of you, which do you prefer playing for, club or country?
Lawrence wants some time to think again.
Well, I mean, do you really need to ask that question, sir?
You can't answer it, so yes.
Well, as someone who's played international rugby, let me tell you that representing your country, you represent the hopes, dreams and aspirations of millions of people. And that is an awesome responsibility. And I think... I don't know. I don't think anything comes close to playing international rugby. It's huge. It's enormous. And it changes people's lives. You have the ability to make people enjoy their week and make it a better week or make it a better day. And life is about memories, isn't it, really? And everyone remembers where they were the day that England won the World Cup. Everyone remembers the day they were when Scotland beat England, whatever. So you can actually put a smile on people's faces and change their lives.
Agree.
Well answered, Lawrence.
I was going to say, Wasps for you, though, was... special.
Yeah, listen, I mean, look, you've got to remember that JJ, he's always been a professional rugby player. I was working, believe it or not, as a surveyor.
Were you?
Yeah, I think I was...
Were you any good?
I was all right. I think I was good at getting rid of squatters. I think that was my main...
Okay.
No, I was a chartered surveyor, qualified, thought I was going to have a career in property. Rugby came along. So it's, for me, playing club rugby, I mean, just being very honest with you, everyone looks at rugby players and thinks, sounds like JJ, he was always going to be a rugby player. The last thing on my mind was to play rugby. If I was going to choose a sport, it would definitely not have been rugby, trust me. I lost my sister in the Marchioness, had a bad couple of years from the age of 16, was making some terrible decisions, getting myself in and out of trouble, and I thought, right, I need to sort my shit out, and I went and joined a rugby club, and I joined Wasps, and from that moment onwards, that's why I played rugby. And I needed a family, a community, people to put their arms around me and to welcome me. And that's what rugby did. I mean, it's often regarded as a sort of white, middle-class, elitist sport, but actually it isn't. It celebrates difference. It brings people together. It changed my life, changed my parents' life, and it's a special sport, and that's why we play it, really.
Are there any Wasps fans in? I mean, how delighted were you with the news that obviously they're going to play in the Championship next year? I mean, that must have meant a lot that they survived.
Well, let's wait and see who plays in the Championship next year. Listen, it's a tough journey for everyone. There's lots going to happen in rugby over the next few years. Fascinating to see what CVC do now. Will they buy all the clubs and then lease them back, franchise them back to the owners? There's all sorts of models that could work. I don't think we're quite through the woods yet. We've lost Wasps, we've lost Worcester. There's a lot of rugby clubs losing money in this country, whichever way they want to dress it up in their P&L. I think the model is a busted flush at the moment. There's too many games played. Too much fight for players' services, so it's got a long way to go. Yeah, that doesn't sound too doom and gloom, does it? But hopefully it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. Any other questions before?
Should the likes of Jack Willis be exempt from the requirement to play for England, given the situation at Wasps?
I think the rule, just so if anyone doesn't know, if you play outside of England, club rugby, you can't play for England. So Jack Willis obviously lost his job through Wasps, went to Toulouse. Just very quickly, I think the financial model of rugby has moved on since that law was brought in. If I was Steve Borthwaite, I would be having and he can change it like that overnight, and I think they should. Because otherwise, more Dave Ribbons is going to Toulon, more and more players are going to go there because it's a career decision, it's a financial decision. So, and I think you can enhance your career by experiencing different environments. I wouldn't go to every French club because Toulouse is the best, but don't think every club's like Toulouse. They're not quite as good as that.
Do you have any aspirations of playing abroad?
I'd definitely consider going abroad, whether Japan or France. Like you said, I think rugby career's very short. So for financial reasons, it's obviously very good. Being in the south of France also isn't too bad. And I've played in the English Premiership for 12, 13 years now. So to experience something different when I'm getting towards the end, I think quite nice. Yeah.
How's your French? You're going to think of something in French to say then, weren't you? You're going to say très bien or something.
I see your agent's ear's pricked up there, JJ. I think he's on the phone now just to get a little deal. Yes, sir. Let's have a question.
One for both of you. Do you think it was a good idea for Borthwick to make Farrell captain?
Well, I think I made my views on the matter very clear. I love Owen Farrell. He's one of my favourite players. I'll definitely have him at 10 at international rugby, ahead of Marcus Smith. But the reality is that every decision the referee gives, nearly every decision, is in and around the breakdown. And I don't think you can... I'm no, psychologist, but if I'm walking towards the referee to go and question a decision, I think that's quite an aggressive walk. And I just...
How would you walk towards a referee now,
well,
then?
No, you don't. You just next
hover?
I'm next to him.
Oh.
Because most of the penalties are given away in the game around the breakdown. So I just think it's really hard for people like Brian O'Driscoll and these guys back in the day to come forward and talk to the referee, because there's microphones everywhere. The conversations you want to have with them is when the ball is rolling into touch from a really brilliant kick from your fly half and you're all running to a line out, and you can have those quiet conversations in the just as you're running, where not being picked up by commentary, because referees don't like to be spoken to like that. And Owen Farrell he's a wonderful player, he's a warrior, he's a talisman, he's going to be a leader anyway, he doesn't need to be captain. I would make Ellis Genge captain right now, personally. I don't know, I mean, look, I think it's like having a joker. You waste the joker by giving Owen Farrell every fly half's a captain. They're leaders anyway. And most World Cups have been won by a forward as a captain.
Ellis as captain? One day?
I mean, I know Courtney's been injured, but I'd lean to Courtney Lawes if he was back fit. I think maybe a little early for Genge. But again, he's going to be in that leadership group. And like Lawrence said, Faz will be in there, Marcus will be in there, Genge will be in there. So there's many wise heads in that group. It is the captain on the day is pretty much the only person that will go and talk to the ref. So in terms of it being like that, like a hierarchy, and this person is the main man, it's not so much that these days. There's definitely more of a collective, and it's...
Do you think we make too much about who's skipper? I mean, it seems we're obsessed with captains in this country, aren't we?
Yeah. I think so.
I think you can have a big influence on the game. As I said, with the referee, you've got to build that relationship with the referee. I know that for a fact. You can, and you've got to build the relationship with the referee, and it's such a big part of the game. The decisions, it can just go one way or another, and you can look at Sam Warburton in the All Blacks game. That. No doubt that he influenced that decision to make sure that game, they didn't give a penalty away and they drew that series. So I think you can affect the game, and I would have a forward as the captain. Would anyone like to ask one more question?
JJ, I ask you, have you still got aspirations to play for England? You still hoping to get back in one day?
Yes.
There we go, perfect.
Good answer.
Anyone else like to finish with one more question? We've got a bit more time left. Have we, Sarra? I think we have. Yes, young lady.
Got to end on a positive note. Is it Grand Slam for Ireland this year?
Is it Grand Slam for Ireland this year? Well, they say one game at a time. Well, Sarra, Sarra's married to the coach of Ireland, by the way.
Not Andy Farrell.
Not Andy Farrell.
One of the other coaches.
The other one.
It's definitely on the cards for them, isn't it? There's no doubt about that. Yeah.
I mean, the fixtures are a big help for them. They're a bloody good side, best side in the world. They've got really good players. I think everyone looked at the championship. They were only one game away last year, weren't they? They lost to France, and that was away in Paris, and that was close. Sexton went off. So I think, with England and France, particularly at home, I think they've got a great chance. And it pains me to say, but we were lucky enough to win a Grand Slam in the World Cup year in Dublin away in the last game of the season. And Ireland were going for a Grand Slam as well. And we went on to win the World Cup. And I really...
Does that mean you think Ireland's going to win the World Cup?
No, I don't think they will, but I was worried about their chances. It was all about Sexton and him keeping fit, but actually with Ross Byrne now, I think I'm starting to see a team that can cope with pretty much anything, really. And, I genuinely think Ireland, France, South Africa or New Zealand will win the World Cup.
The lady who asked the question, I take it you think that they're on for a Grand Slam, yes? Yes.
Sarah's delighted, by the way, because she's obviously read her husband's contract, and he has some really serious bonuses that she's already spent, I would imagine. So
That's a positive to finish on then.
Well, the Grand Slam bonus is a definite positive, I think.
Well, there's a few more games left yet, right? Okay, I think that's all we've got time for tonight. Thank you to everyone here at QB Business Insurance for partnering us on this episode. It's been great to have you all here, and thank you for having us here.
And thank you to you, Sarra. It's lovely to have you back. I meant that. Thanks to Steve from the Evening Standard. And also to our special guest, Jonathan. Thank you. The podcast will return next Tuesday, and we'll be back with all the weekend's results. Until then, thanks for listening, and goodbye.
The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio. Six Nations Special.